So, first, thank you guys for taking the time to join. Um, Kathy and I have done similar presentations several times at several different conferences over the years. Brian Jarvis and I did a similar presentation at Atlas earlier this year as well. But a lot of the work that we're doing and leveraging the Blackbaud connection to Power BI, and also the ability to do the same types of things with Veracross data and other data sources. It's really, we want to demonstrate how quick and clean it is to get some of these things set up. A lot of you guys in this room, I've worked with on projects before. I'm looking at Carolyn right now. I know she's kind of taken what we started and run with it 100 directions. So it's really, really cool to see, getting these tools into people's hands, the ways that we can leverage them. And at the same time, a lot of schools just say, hey, I don't want to mess with that. I just want the end result. And Brian and I work with a lot of schools on exactly that type of relationship as well. So we're thrilled to help in any way we can and want to show you guys how to get started and then come back to us if you have questions or if you want to, dive deeper down the road. So my name is Matt Clemmens. Spent 5 years working for Blackbaud, left just over 13 years ago to start my own consulting business, and I spend 95% of my time in this custom reporting space. So having worked for Blackbaud, I know the education, the finance, and the Razor's Edge software inside out from both the end user side and from the data side. And really, we're leveraging those live connections through the API to do a lot of the reporting work that we're looking at today. Based in Charleston, South Carolina, just down the street from Blackbaud, but do a lot of work with both Blackbaud and Veracross schools, as well as several other software vendors that are interested in kind of taking and visualizing their data. So Kathy, do you want a quick intro?
Sure, sure. Thank you. My name is Kathy Steinman. I am Director of Institutional Research at New Canaan Country School. I've been here for 10 years. I've only been in the institutional research space for 3 years. I have a background in enrollment management, and I actually came way back from a trading commodities world. So I love data systems and analytics and things like that. So our head of school really wanted to have an institutional researcher role. And I was lucky enough to stumble upon Matt because I really wanted to build dashboards and interactive dashboards that could help us make these data-informed decisions as a school. And so we partnered together, and the model we use here at Country School is, Matt and I work together pretty frequently to build out for various audiences within our school. So we started with enrollment management, and then we moved on to advancement, but we've done DE&I work. We've worked with our secondary school counseling office. We've built so many Power BI dashboards that can be pushed out on the cloud to our end users. And, it was very slow in the beginning to get people to use them. People just weren't ready. They didn't trust. They didn't know. Our biggest user to date still is the enrollment office. So we're going to show off a little bit of that stuff today. But what I want to really share, and I love telling people this story, is that it really, doing this work, automated myself out of the role of having to do data diving and reporting in the enrollment office on a daily, weekly, and monthly and annual basis. And so I had a 40-hour work week down there in the enrollment office. And I still have my hand in there, maybe 10 hours a week, 5 hours a week, but 30 hours of it is gone. And that's because really mainly due to the work that we've done in Power BI. So I think that is the thing that this really does for schools. And you can get started pretty quickly with this kind of stuff. And that's what we want to show off today.
Awesome. So thank you. So Kathy and I did, a total of about 7 minutes of prep work for this, but we've done it before, so we're going to get everything rolling pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So Kathy, do you want to share your screen? We can.
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
And kind of at the high level, the process that we use begins with building an advanced list within Blackbaud. I sent that email out this morning that has a link out to another session where we go into some detail on kind of, where to get started in building a list. If you're an expert in them already, wonderful. If you're not an expert, it's a fairly steep learning curve, but anybody can get in there and start pulling data. So all of the data that we pull is leveraging that advanced list data from Blackbaud. And once that advanced list is built, we'll feed it through the API into Power BI. So that's the first couple things we're going to look at today. We'll start with just building an advanced list, and then we'll look at how we can feed that over to Power BI. So Kathy, do you want to pull up Blackbaud? We can grab that list.
Yep. Here we go. And somebody, I don't know how to mute everybody, but if it's somebody.
All right, I think I got it. There we go.
Do you know how to do it? Okay, good.
Your microphones, except for Matt and Kathleen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to request remote control of Kathy's screen.
Yep,
yeah. That will make this easier.
Oh, so what I was going to say, one of the things while Matt's getting started with the advanced list is that, so Matt and Brian do this one way or another. So the way that we work together is Matt and I stay on a call together, and it's a very iterative and dynamic process. The other way that some schools work with Matt, and he alluded to this before, is that you might give him a project and say, go off and do it. I don't want to get my hands dirty in any of this stuff. And you just deliver to me the thing at the end. I like learning. I like being involved, and I want to really understand what drives it. I can't really build everything from ground up on my own, but I can fix and nip tuck and do all kinds of stuff on my own. So I just wanted to share that with you, so you know that there's many ways to get to the end result.
Absolutely. And I love the work with Kathy. I learn something new every time we connect, just because there's so many levels of depth to a lot of what we've built. I've shifted most of the work more recently into kind of the managed services, just because it allows Brian and I to better leverage our time and the way that we're attacking some of these things, but always thrilled to have a conversation with any school who wants to kind of explore options on any of this. So really, to what we're going to be looking at today, Kathy and I thought it would be fun to kind of show how we can pull both the Blackbaud and the Google Sheets data. We're going to look at how we can pull some contract data from Blackbaud with an admissions offense. I know, contracts are a big part of what's coming around the bend for you guys in the coming, weeks and months. So we'll look at how we can pull the raw contract data from Blackbaud. And then we're going to tie in some Google Sheets data that contains exported tuition management data, just so we can kind of build an audit between the systems and catch any discrepancies. If additional aid was awarded on the tuition management side, we'll be able to see some of those types of things by leveraging both of those connections.
Mm-hmm. So that is the power of Power BI, is that you can pull from multiple sources and be able to tell a bigger story. So it's really incredible.
Right. And we're going to anonymize this because it's being recorded and because we're showing to a large group. We're not going to show last names. We'll throw some first names out, but we're not going to show any identifying information as we look at this. So we'll start in the contracts list. Just looking at last year's contract information. So 24, 25. And then we'll just display a handful of fields within the list. And really the fields that we're displaying in the list are the fields that will be available for us to work with when we feed this out to Power BI. So we'll get the user ID, the name, we'll get the contract year, we'll get some dates related to the contract. We'll
coming in here.
Tuition, required fees, tuition insurance. I'm not going to pull financial aid into this one, just so we can kind of get some things going pretty quickly. But I think that's pretty good. Anything else that jumps out, Kathy, is something?
I was thinking about not returning, but I don't know if you want to get into
that's
that.
good. Let's do that.
Hey, Matt and Kathy, is there anything that we need to know in terms of integrated versus non-integrated at this point versus where we would need to go if we're going to do something in tuition management, or is that something for further down the road?
Integrated, you mean integrated with tuition management?
Yeah.
The integrated contract, you mean?
Yeah.
Brian, good question. So really what we're doing here is this assumes that the contract data as a parent signing a contract within Blackbaud, that it's provisioning that account on the tuition management side and creating that record over there.
Okay, so we are assuming that all of these are integrated contracts then today, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And I think in Kathy's case, maybe every one of them is. There may be some very rare ones that are not, but for the most part, they are. And most schools, once you've got it up and running after a couple of years, try to do everything we can to force that integrated contract.
Yeah.
All right, so we've built our list. We've got a
I think
handful of data points. At this point, I'm going to save it.
I think Joe,
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry, I
thanks,
just
Joe.
muted Joe. Sorry, Joe. We've built that demo list. I'm going to search for it. And then the one thing I have to do is, or actually two things, I'm sorry, from here. This list ID is actually the tool that lets us feed this list over to Power BI. So I'm going to copy this. And Kathy had this brilliant idea a couple of years ago of putting it directly in the name of the list, just so that if we're ever searching for a specific list that we're using in Power BI, it's easy for us to find it. And then we're going to share with this web services API manager role. And that's what enables us to feed it through the back end over to Power BI. So we'll just give view access to this specific list to that role. And really the next step, and again, some of the other videos that are at that link I shared this morning go through this in a lot more detail. I'm not going to go in a ton of detail right now, but those recordings kind of walk through this step by step by step. But within Core, we have to have a user record that has access to the Web Services API Manager role. And once that record exists within the security section of the system, in authentication settings. And I guess important thing to note is that everything we're doing here is leveraging the on API rather than the Sky API within Blackbaud. And that's really just because the on API enables us to really cleanly auto refresh the data, where the Sky API forces us to do some weird jumping through hoops and running Power Automate scripts and doing all kinds of stuff. Where on API, it's truly copy 8 lines of code, swap out a couple characters, and then the auto refreshes work online so that you're looking at up-to-date data all the time. So Kathy and I just set up this demo PBI user, and once that user exists and has that web services API manager role, we can generate the key and the secret that serve as basically the username and the password that let us pull the data through the API. So I'm not going to regenerate this now, but for you guys, when you're setting it up, it takes about 40 seconds to get the key and the secret that we can then feed across to Power BI. So create the user record, give the web services API manager role, generate the key and the secret and copy them, and then build the list in Blackbaud. Those are really the steps that we take within the system. And then once we've done that, we can jump straight over to Power BI. And Power BI, I know a lot of you guys have done some work in Power BI. I think a lot of you guys have probably never heard the words Power BI before now, but it's Microsoft's data visualization software that really think of it as kind of Excel on steroids, where we can feed data from 100 different sources, and then we can visualize it in millions of different ways. So what Kathy and I have done so far is literally just create a fresh Power BI file. And within that file, we go to get data and we choose blank query. And once we do that, we jump into the advanced editor. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to show how we can do that. I'm going to jump into our existing query. I'm going to go into my advanced editor. I'm just going to copy this all. I've got this code published out to a website, and I'll send the link out afterwards to you guys so you can replicate these steps. But
That's the secret sauce, everyone, right there.
That's it. That's really it. So I'm going to go to this blank query, this one that we literally just created. I'll go into the advanced editor, and I'm going to paste from that other query. Now, the couple things that you'll need to adjust per school, this string of characters here is the key that we generated within Blackbaud. This string of characters is the secret. And I've got this documented out on a website as well. So you can go grab the code.
And they go
do the
right
steps.
here.
Exactly. So
They
we
go
just,
right here and here.
there we go. So we're just pasting those there. The other two things, right now this says country school. You would just swap that out for your school's domain name if you're pulling from Blackbaud. We do that both there and here. And then finally, the list ID is the tool that lets us go grab from that list that we just created. And what was it?
163
163 or 164?
468.
3, 4, 6, 8. Okay.
So now you've got the pathway. This is the key, secret, and list ID to open up the pathway. And one more thing I think we didn't say is right now we're working in the Power BI desktop version, which can be downloaded for free. And so I just wanted to give people some understanding of where we are and what we're working on. And we will push it out later to the cloud.
That's a great point. And zero barrier to entry. The one thing that you need is a Windows machine to be able to do this building because this doesn't function on a Mac. Once the reports are built, they can be distributed and any user on any device can see the reports. But to build, it has to be done in Windows.
Matt, there was a question. Do you need to, for the on API access, do you need to purchase the SDK from Blackbaud?
Yes, yes. So I've found that probably just over half of the schools I work with already have the SDK for some other integration. I think Magnus and a few other older integrations use the SDK. But if you don't have that, then I think Blackbaud charges like $900 for access to that set of tools that lets us feed this data. Good question. And what I'm doing here is I'm taking these dates that we're seeing and just telling Power BI that these are not text strings, but to actually treat them as a date when it sees a date.
Mhm.
And then actually one more thing, Kathy, I'm going to close and apply this, but I want to jump back into our advanced list and add the contract status just so we can see.
Ah, yes, of course. Okay, so let's go over there.
So we'll just real quickly do that.
163 468.
Just cheat that way. There we go. And then this is part of the power as well, as if I realize that I would need to add more information later, I can pull anything I want to see. So really
And do
anything I can
this.
get to an advanced list, I can feed to Power BI.
And we edit our advanced lists all the time because someone will always say, I want to know one more thing about this student. What town do they live in? What's their zip code? What's their? And we just go back and add it. And we can then pull that field into Power BI.
Nope, let me fix one thing here. So what is query 2? Is that the one? I'm going to get rid of this guy.
Okay.
Sorry, I think
so
I
that we
had that
don't.
other one. Delete that model. Say yes. And then let me try. Oh, come on.
Okay.
All right, we'll apply changes. There we go. Yeah, in a fresh report file, if we're pulling from multiple advanced lists, there's one more step that we need to take to tell it that we can not load the data at the same time. So there's some wonky stuff once we get into Power BI with the way that we're kind of using and pulling the data. But in this case, now I'm seeing all of those fields that existed in the advanced list as being available. And before we go grab the Google Sheets data, let's just really quickly look at how we can see how many contracts have been returned and some details around the dates that they came in. So I'm going to say, actually one more thing. I'm going to go edit this query because we just added that status.
The contract status, we need to load it in.
Yeah, I just need to tell it to grab that information and make it available.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
I know this was kind of inside baseball because you and I were talking about this the other day, but you were mentioning to me that there's a limit on how often Power BI can pull from the API. When you're adding and subtracting and putting different columns in, does that count against that limit when you pull those in?
Great question. No, it doesn't. So
Okay,
really the limit is on the Microsoft side in that we can only schedule the refreshes to run up to 8 times a day in the automated fashion on the server. But come on, what are we doing here?
I might be taxing my computer.
No, it's fine. It should work.
Okay, there we go.
There we
this
go.
is how we add an extra column. So we went to the advanced list, we added the status, we come over here, we just tell it to reload, and we include that now in the loading. And that's as fast as it is. So in the desktop version, there's no limitation. As Matt said, when you're pushing it out and you're scheduling those refreshes, unfortunately, you're limited to 8 times a day, which is plenty. It seems to be plenty for my team. If I need to make a change on the fly and they say I really need to know like admission decision and you don't have it on this one thing I'm looking at, I can add it and then push it out and publish it on the fly. And then they'll have it immediately.
Yeah, great point. So a lot of times, for these contract ones, when Brian and I are building these fresh, we'll grab, one that's got the contract, a separate one that's pulling the financial aid, separate one that's pulling the parent information with whether they're a responsible signer or not, separate list that's pulling, student grade levels and other details. So we'll stitch data together from a whole bunch of different sources to be able to tell a lot of stories. All right, so now we're seeing that status. So we'll just say that we want that to be our columns. And then I'll say, just give me a count of, how many students are in each of those buckets. So kind of just building a pivot table. I don't want to see the first one. I want to see the distinct count. And now I can see that we have 559 processed contracts, 66 that have not been started, and 18 that are marked as saved. Now, let's go one level deeper here. And this not returning, when a student says that they're not going to return the next year, we can say that, or we can mark that in the contract itself as a way to be able to report that out. So not returning comes out as a 1 versus 0. The 0 tells us that they are not marked as not returning. The 1 tells us that they are marked as not returning. And during contract season, that can be really helpful in knowing, the contract's out, it's been offered, but we're still, it's not going to come in if it's been marked as not returning. The family's notified us that they're not going to attend. So if I want to see some details around who these people are, I can build this table that'll interact with that top list. And let's just look at names and IDs. And then the date that they were confirmed as not returning. So we'll pull that in. I'm going to tell it to format this a little bit differently just so it makes a little more sense. So if I want to look at those 11 kids who signed a contract, contract was processed, but have subsequently told us that they're not enrolling, I can click that 11 and that'll bring it right into focus, who those kids are, when they informed us that they're not enrolling. I can sort it by that confirmed by date. Looks like we had some, minimal late summer melt, but a handful of families that after they signed the contract, ended up not re-enrolling. So you can see the power of the interactive nature of a lot of these visuals, right off the bat. And when we actually build this, we'll build it by grade, by division, by new versus returning, 100 different layers of data that we're feeding. For demo purposes, just want to show, how quick it is to get started with some of these things.
You all can imagine that you could slice this up any way you want and include all kinds of data in this table down here. And we'll show you some more of that, like what it actually looks like on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to get to that as well. So Kathy can show some of the really, really cool functional stuff that she's built. So now we've got this Blackbaud data flowing. Let's go grab the Google Sheets data. And to do that, I just chose Get Data. I chose Other, and then I'm going to search Google. And I've got this Google Sheets option where I can go literally just grab the link from Google to the sheet. Only the people who this is shared with. So if I were to try to get this, I couldn't get to it. Only Kathy's going to be able to access this data. So Kathy, do we have that?
Yeah. So let's head over there. And so we made a demo sheet here. We're just going to grab this. I'll head back over here and we're going to drop that in. It's going to
And I know
ask me
there's several Veracross schools on here as well. So, the method for pulling this data or automating it will not work in the same way from Veracross. But if you're able to use the data packages to feed this data either to an Excel file or to a Google Sheets file, then you can leverage this connection to go in and pull the data.
So I just signed in and now I'm connecting to that Google Sheet.
And
I don't know
Matt,
about all of you, but I'm super excited that it can pull data from multiple sources and then stitch it together. Hi, John.
Hi, can you speak to why you would prefer to use a Google Sheet versus just having an Excel file? Is there an advantage to doing it that way?
The Excel file needs to be saved to a SharePoint folder that then has to be mapped to Power BI, which is fine. If you've got the SharePoint infrastructure, it actually works really well. But a lot of schools, if you're a Google school or if you don't want to manage a SharePoint site, a lot of times the Google Sheet's just kind of an idiot-proof way to do it. Just create the sheet, save it, and then we can link to it directly.
Good
And you
question.
just link using the URL like Kathy just did.
Literally
It's as
just
simple
copying
as
the
that.
URL.
Mhm.
Perfect.
And if there's multiple tabs in the sheet, you can pull from, one or all or some combination.
And do you need to
Awesome.
share that? You only need to share it with the person that's creating the Power BI database. You don't need to share it with everybody that's going to be viewing it on the website, right?
No, exactly right. So
Exactly.
just the person creating it, because those are
Mhm.
the credentials that get used every time the auto refresh happens.
Mhm.
Okay.
Here, I'm going to tell it, use the first row as headers when we pull this Google Sheets data. And so, Brian, to your earlier question, the school student ID, when we're using the integrated contract, this gets auto-populated in tuition management. What we're looking at here is just exported tuition management data. So we wanted to be able to leverage both sides and make sure that we're tying cleanly. So at this point, I'm just going to say close and apply. And then that Google Sheet will appear as a second data set that we're able to use. So now I've got these two totally disconnected data sets in the same Power BI file. So I'm going to just take one step to connect that information between these two locations. Where's my query one? There we go. So I've got my two data sets showing. I'm literally just going to grab the user ID. I know I've got one row per user on the Google Sheet side. I've got one row per user in the advanced list. So I'm going to just say connect this data using that user ID, which is, what's it called here? It's something like
I think.
school student ID. There we go. So I'm literally just going to drag and drop that to that. And I'm going to say save. It's good. It's a many-to-one relationship. We've got some sort of duplication
Yeah, there
somewhere.
might be somewhere.
I wonder
That's
if
fine.
you've got kids who, because we do, they have more than one type of aid. So they might have like a scholarship
You're
and
absolutely
FA
right. Yeah,
stack.
that could be.
Yeah. So on the tuition or depending on how that list is structured coming out of the tuition management side, that's probably the root of it, Carolyn. But now we've got that data connected. So I'm going to start feeding some things over. So let's grab that, tuition number and feed it over to, or actually, let's just grab the aid. Maybe I want to say financial aid. What is this? That's our remission. This is we'll just grab the financial aid entry. So I'm going to feed that data into this query. Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to do that because I've got them connected. I'll just show how we can do some other stuff without shuffling data between the queries. Let's build into this visual. We'll just copy this guy. I'm going to change the structure. I'm going to get rid of that not returning piece. But of those processed contracts, rather than seeing the count of user IDs, let's just see what that financial aid number looks like by contract status. So in my processed contracts, it makes sense that I don't have any not started or saved contracts on the tuition management side. That's my, aid number. Let's say that I also want to see, the total of my tuition billed. And actually, we'll get rid of that header column. And Kathy and I have modified some of this data, so we're not showing off all her live info. But again, if I've got student grade levels, if I've got 100 other things, then I can see additional details. Let's throw that grade in as my rows. So now I can see, per grade, what the tuition numbers look like, what the aid numbers look like. Let's throw out one more, the remission numbers as well. There we go. And we can really start to see the power of, where we could go with this with, half an hour of legwork and kind of even explaining as we're going. We've got a functional report that's pulling live Blackbaud data, pulling from a Google Sheet, combining that information together, and then letting us see a million different layers of detail.
Yeah.
We'll do a real quick calculation just to show what we can do, but let's
Mhm.
just see what the, average rate of aid is per grade level. What percentage of the total cost of attendance is being covered by financial aid per grade. So I'm going to create a new measure within Power BI. Actually, I'm going to do a new quick measure because I don't even need to know any coding to do some of these things. I'm going to select a calculation. And in this case, I'm going to do a division where I'm going to divide my aid by my tuition. So we'll say divide that by that and add it. Okay, so now I've got this measure in place. And let's just pop that in here so we can get a sense of what we're looking at. I'm going to add a new column here that shows my,
I don't think it went in yet.
no,
There
sorry.
we go.
There we go. There we go.
One more time.
Oh, I'm
Hang on.
sorry. Through the screen share, it might be coming.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. So let's tell it that that is not a whole number, but that that's a decimal number.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, not a decimal number. We'll call it a percentage. And we'll go to one decimal place. All right. So now I can see, with a handful of clicks, and let's just rename some of these so they make a little more sense. We'll call this just FA. We'll call this tuition. And we'll call this remission.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll call this aid percent or FA percent or percent FA. I don't know. We can call it anything. Percent FA.
Yeah. So I don't know about all of you, but at country school, building this kind of stuff prior to having Power BI meant you would build something. Maybe you'd have it in Excel, maybe you'd have it in Google Sheets, and then somebody would ask you for the same thing in a month, and you would have to refresh everything, re-download it, respin it, repivot table it, redo everything. We don't have to do that at all anymore. Once this thing is built once, it lives on. And it's such a game changer for us. And what we're demonstrating here, where we're reconciling between what's the contract says and what's in enrollment management, that Google Sheet was theoretically pulled from tuition management. And we're reconciling the two to one another because our business office always wants to make sure that what's happening over in tuition management reconciles with what was contracted with all of the families. That used to be something that I was doing with the business office kind of manually every few weeks throughout the enrollment season. Now it's automated. The way we built it is pretty sophisticated over in my real world, where it spits out any differences that it finds. And then we just reconcile if there is a difference, if somebody's made a change, some edit or something on either the contract side or in tuition management. So we've taken a very laborious process and reduced it down to just exception management. And that's just one example of how we spent half an hour or an hour building something, and then it flies on its own now.
Can you use this to reconcile RE to FE?
Oh, yeah.
You You can? Okay.
Yep. So it's a totally
Bane of
different.
my existence.
Yeah, Karen. So it's a totally
Building it right now.
process. Yeah, we truly are. So Kathy and I, that's kind of our current project.
Uh-huh.
But there's a Power BI plugin or actually a Power BI connector for Financial Edge. There's another
Okay.
Power BI connector for Razor's Edge, and
Okay.
we can go pull data from both. I think some of the real power and some of the really, really cool stuff that Kathy and I have done is combining all that data together. So if I wanted to look at, the kids sending school from admissions and look at how does that impact parent giving, or
Okay.
the uh, university that a student attended after they graduated, or their GPA while they were a student, what's the impact 10, 15 years down the road on alumni giving? So just 100 ways to grab data from any of a number of sources and combine it to tell all kinds of really, really cool stories.
So can you do something as complex as we just started a new capital campaign and they're building in our annual fund into there too. So therefore you have future year annual funds, which is really not in the world. So kind of got that set up now between RE and FE, but I'm running reports in RE. And of course, it's putting the whole pledge, even though I tried with dates, putting it all in there. And WTF, right? I don't want to be manually doing any of this. And yet, so can you get that specific and say, okay, only take this part of it, this installment of this, add it into here and give me a board report that way?
Kathy's laughing because we literally did that yesterday with her development office.
Now we got to talk.
Yeah, send me a note.
I'm
We'll set up a
gonna,
time.
yeah.
Yeah. But really, that's a lot of the real power of Power BI versus something like the Insight Designer within Blackbaud is that we can write conditional logic, we can create our own fields, we can write rules. So Karen, in that case, I would just tie a fiscal year to the gift. And a lot of times I'll base that on either the fund or the campaign that it's tied to and have it do a switch statement that will, put everything in FY25 that's intended for 25, put everything else in a future year that's intended for that future year. And
Oh
we
my
can,
God. And then you can also, because I'm not totally done connecting RE to FE, but I would like to. The business office just moves a little slower. But you know how sometimes you get a payment in, like in RE, it's this month, the deposit comes in the following month on the 30th. Can you even adjust for that?
yes, but so there's a
Reconciling?
lot of buts to that. So if
Okay.
the gift date is the gift date, but
Yep.
a lot of times I'll adjust the GL post date to match
That's
the
what I do.
deposit date,
Okay.
and then we can
Yep.
leverage both of those fields to
Okay.
tell every
Perfect.
story.
I already do. Okay. So, okay. Because then that's like half of the time that we spend doing like, oh God.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
integration is wonderful. That REFE integration is fantastic for any schools that are not using it. It just automates so many things. And then Power BI lets us leverage that information and the fact that that connection exists to be able to tell a million different types of stories.
Yeah, well, I like the fact that you can, like you said, can you then also like get a complete picture of how much they gave, how many kids maybe they have, when they started, and maybe even do a an affinity ranking or something on there and why, okay.
Yes, and yes,
Cool.
and yes, and yes, and yes. Really,
Okay.
it's,
Once
any
you
data
had that
point
done,
that's
yeah.
stored. So I'm actually going to let us switch gears because I think this is going to answer a lot. I guess before we switch gears though, any other questions or any, things that we can talk through in a little more detail? Really just wanted to demonstrate how cleanly and quickly we can do some of this before we let Kathy show off some of the cool toys that she's built for her team. Rafael, what you got?
I was wondering if is there a way to look at year over year data
Oh yeah.
Yes.
for
Let's
this?
transition over to the admissions reporting, and Kathy's got a ton of that already. Can do the same thing on the development side as well.
Yeah. That's part of what's one of the most I'd say that about everything though. One of the really powerful things is the year over year data because like right here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll let you drive us here, Kathy.
Well, yeah. Let's see. Hold on.
I think I'm clicked on that one row.
Did you click on here? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got that.
Where'd you click?
Here we go. Right here. I'll undo it.
Oh, there you are.
There we go.
Okay, I didn't see where the mouse went. Okay. So this is an example This is not our real data, but this is an example of what our year-over-year admission data looks like for the team. So we push this out on the cloud, a version of this, and they can interact with this and they can see. These are, well, let me orient you a little bit. Over here on the left are some slicers. And one of the things that I really love about Power BI, and we didn't mention this, and many of you understand it, but maybe you don't, is that your users are getting a window into the data, but they can't manipulate the data. They can't mess up your data. They're not going to resort your spreadsheets. They're not going to do anything. They can't break anything, which to me is huge, because I don't know about you, but so many people, if I push out a Google sheet or an Excel sheet, they mess it up, they resort it, they delete my data, they make all kinds of mistakes. It's awful. But now I'm giving them the power of being able to interact with it and answer their own questions on the fly, but they're not going to mess anything up. So if someone came into the data here and they wanted to say, I'm really interested, I'm the marketing department, I'm only interested in the lower school, well, they might be able to select just the grades for the lower school and see what the inquiries look like. And then from there, they're looking maybe at this year-over-year data and saying, in lower school, we only have 6 versus the prior years. What's going on? Let me see what those 6 look like. Well, if they drill down, they can see the 6, who they are, what towns they're coming from. They can go back to the prior year and say, well, wait a minute, what did it look like there? Why did we have 18? Where were they coming from? How did that break out across the grades? Do I want to see more detail? We can drill into any of this stuff and expand on that data. So you can begin to see what that really looks like when you're on the receiving end of this data. In this example, my map isn't actually working, I don't think, but
Yeah, I think it's trying.
oh, here we go. Here we go. We did. All right. So again, I'm thinking about my marketing team. She has access to this when I push it out, and she loves it because it really helps her understand where people are coming from and what are they doing and things like that. It answers a lot of her questions. So she might want to look by a zip code, and she might want to look by a town or whatever. So she can drill in, and it'll take her right in and see what's going on and who these people are and where they're coming from. When we look at things like applications, again, I've showed, this is the way I laid it out. Many people can lay things out, and it's like an Excel spreadsheet. You can lay it out however you want. If you work with Brian, you'll see that Brian makes his stuff really beautiful. This is a little dry and dull, but again, slicers are over here. These are the tables where people can interact, and they can see the results down here. We can drill down in year over year. I don't remember who asked the question about year over year, but what we can do with applications is we can even get down into year over year to a date. So if I were to click here and I wanted to see maybe to November 4th, I can pick very specifically to a date. How are we doing with applications this year versus last year?
And Karen, that applies on the Razor's Edge side as well. If we're looking at year-to-date fundraising numbers, then we can do exactly the same types of things across funds, across appeals, across campaigns, across anything, across constituencies.
Yeah, and it can, so really drilling down to a specific date is really helpful, and like Matt said, it translates to so many different ways. As you can see across the bottom, these are almost like tabs of a spreadsheet. I've gone crazy, and I have so many of them, and some of them you can see I don't share with my teams, where they have like they're not viewable. But once you have the foundation built, you can take that foundation and spin it up in so many ways that depending on what your team needs. So, for example, we do an early action process for our youngest applicants. So we have early action laid out for them so that they can see how that early action is going. We have all of our decisions are laid out. I'm sure all of you who are in the admission world want to know about decisions and what those look like, and what your decision rates are, what is your yield, all of that kind of stuff. Matt and I have laid out in a million different ways. So I could spend days showing you all of this stuff. that we
Have you
built,
done
and
it
I
for
don't want to bore you.
NAIS yet? Have you done this for your NAIS reporting yet? That
I
would be a
have,
game
yes, I
changer.
have it for
Okay.
Dazzle and for
Yep.
Index. You can see down here, I have Index, 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 everything. So I used to take forever to do the Index and
Yep.
Dazzle,
Yep.
but now it's all laid out so that I can just take the data. I don't upload it. I theoretically could, I just didn't get to that part yet, but I just bring it over. It's super, super easy. So
Kathy, I've got a really quick question.
mhm.
I want to know where you get that magic clear all slicers button from.
Oh, yeah, isn't that thing great? Because how
That's
many
awesome.
times?
That causes more confusion here than anything.
That is probably, I know. Hang on a second.
It's somewhere
It
in,
is up here.
yeah.
Hang on a second.
And Brian discovered that one a while
Oh,
ago.
yay, Brian.
They snuck it in there, and
In
it's a
here.
game changer.
I think it's
Oh,
in
buttons.
it's in buttons. Clear all slicers.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, and that was a game changer for us. Thank you, Brian. Um, I mean, there's so many things. We built case loads for teams. Like one of the things as a new user coming into enrollment management, our team really just wanted to get a handle on who am I responsible for? And Blackbaud doesn't have something really like that today. I mean, they kind of do, and you can make a list, but it's not really interactive and it doesn't tell you enough, at least from our experience. So we built this. It's actually far more sophisticated now. This is just an example of what the original thing looked like. But the team could come in and say, I am Beth. I am interested in my applicants. And I'm only interested in today, I'm just going to look at my kindergartners. So she could look here and see exactly what she wants to do with just this group of people. The other thing Matt and I didn't talk to you about, but it is so powerful, and I'm not going to link it to because it will take me to live data, but this link here will open up this person's record in enrollment management and take me right there. So if I want, I can work all I want in Power BI. If I want to head over to Blackbaud, I just click the link and boom, it opens it up and it brings me right over there. So I'm never more than a click away from seeing the actual underlying data.
And the same logic applies in both Veracross and in Razor's Edge as well. So you can just leverage that link tool to be able to dive into the data.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt, am I saying this right? That what you will do is you build this, you can use it year over year, but what you do is in your advanced list, you change your dates in there. Like, so like if, especially with emissions, if you're doing, if this list would be pulling maybe 24, 25, you have to change that filter to 25, 26 in order to get the new data, right?
Yes,
You got
but so that is one way to do it. But a lot of
Uh-huh.
times, if I can trust that the year over year data is not going to give me a million different duplicates, I can
Uh-huh.
build a list that contains multiple years of data. Um,
Okay.
Or sometimes I'll have, if I want the year over year, I'll build 5 lists, one for each year, feed them to Power BI, and then within Power BI, I can stack them on top of each other so that it gives me
Okay.
just a data set that becomes filterable in the way that we're looking at this here.
Okay, so do you build out future ones just to have, so this way it's all like say you were say somebody hired you, can you say, okay, I want to build out 5 years worth, but I'm starting with this year and then build out, or do you just build back?
Either way,
Okay.
sometimes it's easier to validate the data if there's something there. So if you don't have
Okay.
any applications for the 28, 29 year yet, sometimes it's hard to
Okay.
assume it's going to be perfect. But
Yeah.
generally, kind of when Brian and I are working with a client, we're keeping an ongoing relationship where we're helping manage it. It's not just to set it and forget it. We kind of build it as a ongoing, make sure you've got what you need when you need it type of thing.
Can you show us where you got that link field from? I think Sylvie wanted to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So where
Let me
did
go
that
to
link
one
field
where it
come
is.
from? Let's see.
Yeah.
If we jump into this visual,
Mm-hmm.
then which table is that in? You can see here that right now we're pulling from about 10 different lists in Blackbaud and stitching that data together within Power BI. So I just need to see which table that is coming from.
Yeah, inquiry data.
Inquiry data. Perfect. So what we did there was we just created a new field called link. And you can see that we've got a million calculated fields here. We've got a lot of different ways that we've kind of manipulated the data. There we go. For this link, we literally just copied from Kathy's site, we went to a kid's record to the portion of the record that we want to land on. In this case, it was the checklist. We went to a student's checklist, copied that link, and then just merged the user ID into the middle where it'll take us to that specific kid if we merge that into the field. So just leveraging what Blackbaud gives us. We can also pull pictures from Blackbaud. So the student photos that are uploaded, we can feed those into the report files. And we do that all the time with different types of reports. If the admissions office is looking at who's, visiting in the next week, sometimes it's helpful to see the kid's face in the reporting piece.
Would you be willing to drop that, paste that text right there into the chat?
Yeah, because well, Kathy, are you
Oh,
willing-
this?
it
Yeah,
won't work for
that's-
you, but you can just leverage it and change it to whatever you want.
Absolutely. That's fine.
Thank you. Yeah, we just have to paste in our own URL for our own My School app instance, right? And then
You got it. And Kathy, can I let you throw that in the chat?
Yeah, here,
Right.
I got it. Hang on a second.
And a couple other questions that have popped in. So Donna, the step-by-step tutorials, that email I sent out earlier this morning to everybody who'd signed up, if you click to that page on my website, it's one of the other recorded sessions. So I think this is the 7th one that's similar to this that we've done. Just basically as people are asking questions, either Kathy and I or Carol and I have done one, Brian and I have done one. We'll just set up a time where we'll just demonstrate how we do some of this stuff. So moving forward, I'm always thrilled to do these types of things to kind of show the ways that we can get specific into different areas of the system. But I've got several of those posted on that site, and those are the recordings of these sessions that give that walkthrough of exactly what we did.
I thought maybe we'd take a moment and just hop over to what the cloud version looks like for the end user. So Matt talked a little bit about that, and just at Country School, we do push out. We keep 20 licenses, and I think they cost about $5 a month. And at any given time, there are up to 20 users in my school. And we swap them around if we need to, if we have more people who want them or whatever. But generally speaking, we just keep 20 licenses, push them out. It's $5 a month. It's really cheap. The desktop version, as we said before, was free. So it's a really inexpensive way to get started to being able to push out your data in ways to put it in the hands of your end users. So this is what their experience looks and feels like. So they would come into their cloud-based version, and this is what we were just looking over in the desktop version, and this is what it looks like for them. So here we're back at the caseloads. It's just slow to load because I have too many things going at the same time, but here I am, Beth, and I'm looking at my applicants, and this is what it looks like for me. And the other thing I wanted to show you is you can expand a focus view, and people can always export the data. I don't know why you would want to do that.
Don't show them that.
I don't know why you'd want to do that, because if you do, it's static as soon as you do it. But we really discourage that. But there are, as you can see, there are so many ways that they can interact with our data, all of these different tabs this is just the year-over-year funnel data. We also have contract data, financial aid data, enrollment data. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I only have a few demo spaces, but one of the other demo spaces that we wanted to show you today was, do you want to look at the RE and just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Sounds like there's some interest in that.
Okay, because we have one called the student profile, which is just a general student profile. And then we also have our RE samples. So let's go to RE, and then if we have time, we'll look at the other one. But I just want you to leave with a sense of what is possible.
So this one's actually really cool. And a lot of schools kind of battle with this. How do we track parent participation? And if there's twins in a class, do we count them once? Do we count them twice? If there's dollars and there's kids in 3 different grade levels, do we give everybody full credit, or do we divide it by 3 to show the participation within the class? Kathy and I have automated all of that. It's where we basically write the rules on the back end, and then we're able to in real time see the details behind it. So, just like the others, who are these, who's that one person who's given this year? We set this up in September for the Blackbaud conference, so not a ton of giving had come in yet at that point, but interactive in the same way where I can click on a number and then I can see, the details around the giving. This photo, if we had refreshed this data, this is actually going to feed the photo from core to marry alongside the Razor's Edge reporting data, the way that we're looking at that.
Exactly.
Other ones here, the university and college, some of this is really cool, where, we're pulling from Razor's Edge. They've got this fantastic data on where students attend college. So we've tied that information to some of the data from core. In theory, we could look at, GPAs and athletic participation and, who the kid's advisor was and, 14 other layers of data to overlay with this college data that generally is cleaner in core than, I'm sorry, excuse me, in RE, and probably has more history than what most schools will have in core.
Yeah, things come up where we're doing a capital campaign or something like that to build a new field for the lacrosse team, and the advancement team would want to know who played lacrosse over the last 20 years here at Country School. And that would have been a little bit of a project in the past for our advancement team, but not when you have Power BI. When you have Power BI and you know who played lacrosse and you have all this stuff, you can go and pull this data almost instantly. So they really, really like this as well.
And can we real quickly, Kathy, show that the student profile too? I think that's some really cool
Yes,
stuff.
let's look at that.
And I guess, one of the big takeaways is it's relatively low barrier to entry to start pulling the data, and then unlimited the ways that we can use it and combine it together and show, layers and layers of detail.
We built two versions of this. One we did for currently enrolled students. So you could look up a specific student and see who has been their advisor the entire time that they've been here. You would get their photo. We built this little card that has some basic information about them, and where they are currently, who their advisors were, do they have siblings in the school? If they do or did, if they're alums, what their status is, where they went after here. And down here, I love this, is the attendance data year over year over year. And you can see we built this because we were interested in seeing what does a child's attendance look like compared to his or her peers, to their peers. If they were on financial aid, indicate whether or not they were and what type of aid. And if they're in athletics, what did they play? Who was their coach? Because some of the things that we were asking ourselves is, who is a trusted person in this child's life, on their school life? And also we had some SSAT scores that we could pull in. So this was a prototype that I wanted to share with our leadership team so that they could have one-stop shopping to be able to see a 360-degree view. And then when they saw that, they got super excited and said, well, wait a minute, could you do that for me for incoming students? Could we see the same thing, similar thing for our incoming students, so that when we hand off our students to our teachers, they would have a better sense of who's landing in their rooms. So we did the same kind of thing. So people could see basic information about the incoming student. Who are the parents? Where are the parents working? What are their, in just everything. If they've got a connection with a student that's currently here or an alum, and all kinds of information. And you could make it your own, but once we have all the data flowing, building something like this just wasn't that hard. It took, I don't know, maybe an hour or two. And then I spend more time making it pretty, but the foundation, once it's laid, the rest just falls into place. And this isn't that interesting, but people are always asking me for something. So people will say, oh, I need to know how long all of our students have been enrolled in the first grade. I'm like, okay, fine. So I'll tell you. And then that way they could have an interactive sheet and they could see, oh, okay, this is how long the first graders have been enrolled by student. So once we build something, they have it out there forever and they don't have to ask me again. The hardest part is me remembering where it is. So I think that's all that I have that was in demo mode, but as you can tell, we build quite a lot of stuff here. And we push out whatever it is that our teams are looking for and can be useful so that they can make data-informed decisions. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they were, yeah, is data my full-time job? Kind of. Not really. I'd probably spend 10 hours a week on it because mostly it's doing all the legwork for me. I just, the wizard behind the machine, and then I just let it fly. But, oh, you'd love to know how we're collecting college data. Oh, that's a really good question, Lauren. Our advancement team keeps in constant contact with our alums, and we're a really well-connected school. So we're regularly asking families to give us updates on where they go after they leave country school.
Oh, John,
yay,
great question.
Colby.
So once something's built in desktop, you hit a button to publish to the cloud. Within Kathy's environment, she's got what, 5, 6, 7 workspaces within the online Power BI service that are targeted for the different user groups that can see different reports. So, Kathy's the wizard, she can see everything, but there are admission specific ones. There are admissions ones with financial aid and tuition data. There's a separate development portal. So basically we build these little, buckets within the Power BI service called workspaces. Then we can publish a report to a workspace and manage user access at the workspace level so that different users have different levels of access to different things.
That is really important and something that we take very, very seriously here. So people are not cross-pollinating and seeing things that they should not be seeing. So we take that very seriously.
Can you show us what that looks like, the permission side of that?
Sure.
And I know we're past noon. If anyone needs to hop off, that's fantastic. But we can stick around as long as Kathy's available.
Yeah. So if I wanted to add someone, I don't do this that often, so forgive me. Well, first of all, one thing I want to show you is, hang on.
In the EMA,
I'm not in the right version, right? Go ahead and grab.
Yeah, sorry. I'll get remote control. We're looking for the refresh piece.
Yeah. I was going to go and just show how you schedule that and how you add someone to a specific workspace. So
perfect. So this is, this BBCon 2024. Kathy and I and Austin Awaku from Calvert Hall presented together at the Blackbaud user conference this year, some of this type of stuff. So we've got this demo workspace that we built for BBCon 2024. And within that workspace, we've got the report, and then the semantic model is Microsoft wording for the data set behind the report. So when we publish something online, we're publishing both the model behind the report, which contains all of the connections between the tables, all of the custom fields, all those things that we built, and then the report itself. So to schedule the refresh of the data, John, well, I'll get to your question in just a second here, but to schedule the refresh, I can jump into this little refresh area, and then within the refresh section, I can say, turn on auto refresh. Because this was a demo one we built, we don't have it auto refreshing. We just built this once. But in all of Kathy's ones that are pulling live data from core, this refresh is turned on, and we can schedule it up to 8 times a day to go grab fresh data from the Blackbaud advanced list, the Google Sheet, really whatever the data source is that we're using.
Right, and this is what it would look like. You can add times, and you can say exactly when you want it to refresh.
So during contract season, a lot of schools have it going hourly, where it's just going through how many contracts have come in since, noon. Admissions, a lot of times they want to see those inquiries rolling in and kind of real time make sure that the numbers here tie to what they're seeing in Blackbaud, and we can force those refreshes at regular intervals. John, to your question, if I go back to that workspace, then once I've built a report, I can either manage access at the workspace level if I want to give someone access to everything within the workspace, and that's from this manage access area. I can add people or groups from there. Important note, though, is that it'll only let me add a user that has a Power BI license assigned to them. I can't add anybody who doesn't have a license. That's Microsoft's way of protecting it so that they're controlling access, and their way of making a few bucks a month off of each user as they come in. The other way at the report level, even if somebody doesn't have full workspace access but needs access to a specific report, we've got the option here to manage permissions at the report level. So somebody with workspace access will have access to everything in that workspace. I don't have to add them to the individual reports, where somebody at the report level can only see that report.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. And it's a big, there's a million directions. I started doing work in Power BI probably 7, 8 years ago with zero training and just a little bit of Crystal Reports background. But you beat your head against it long enough, and you can do just about anything in here. The documentation online is great, and there's some good Microsoft forums for helping you get started. But the learning curve is steep. So a lot of the work Brian and I do is to help accelerate that learning curve for schools as they're jumping into some of these things.
Matt, there was a question from Shauna that she asked the reason why Veracross needs to use the data packages instead of pulling the data directly from the lists.
It's really just the data structure. So at the end of the day, the data packages are just grabbing that list data. It's the mechanism that Veracross uses to feed that list data to an outside source. Very similar to the SDK within Blackbaud, it's just the tool set that we use to grab that list data. I've done work with several schools who don't want to pay. I think Veracross charges a couple grand a year for that data packages piece, maybe 2,000-3,000 bucks a year. They'll just go when they want refreshed data, they'll export it, paste it into the Google Sheet, and then they've got that refresh happening on whatever schedule they want. But I think a lot of the power is in having that real-time connection to see things happening as they're happening. But there's nothing that says we have to do that. Karen, a lot of times on the development side, I'll see schools do that where, maybe it's not as critical that we get the daily numbers, but weekly we'll just do a data dump, throw it in a Google Sheet, and then can go from there.
Kathleen, fun fact, I grew up right there. My kids went to King's School. I know your school very well. And I lived in Davenport Farm, which is literally you could walk to.
I drive past it every day.
Yeah. So
Oh, I love that neighborhood.
yeah, I
That's
did.
so
I did
funny.
too. 26 years there. So yeah. And yeah, relocated to
wow.
Florida. So,
Well, any of you reach out anytime if you want to dig in a
Oh,
little bit
thank you.
deeper.
I really appreciate that. And Matt, I can't wait to probably after the holidays, I'm gonna work some magic here to get some money.
Reach out. I always love chatting, and really,
Yeah.
Brian came on board about 6, 8 months ago to work with me, and it's kind of opened up our ability to take on new projects. I was kind of overloaded, so it's been a nice pressure release valve where he does phenomenal work and he makes it look way prettier than I can. So I do the plumbing, and then he makes it beautiful and is just
Okay.
thoughtful with the way that he approaches
That's a good
things.
team. That's a good team.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank
So
you so
John,
much.
your question about query string for grabbing it from Veracross, I don't have one. The Veracross schools I've worked with have set that up on their end, and then I've just kind of leveraged it. But I'd be happy to hop on a Zoom and figure it out together. If you guys have the data packages, I'm sure we could figure it out pretty quickly.
Otherwise, we'll for sure be under 300. So.
All right. Well, we can wrap it up there. But Kathy, thank you for being willing to share.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Well, you guys
you.
have a
This is
wonderful rest of your
beautiful.
day.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.